All right. Good morning and welcome everyone. I'll officially welcome everyone to the February 5th, 2026 meeting of the State Route 37 Policy Committee. Prior to the roll call, I'd like to make it clear for the record and should be reflected in the minutes that Supervisor Moulton Peters and Supervisor Manfree are participating remotely under sections 54-953C and 54-953.8.3 respectively of the Brown Act. Those supervisors joining us, if anyone over the age of 18 joins you during the meeting, be sure to let us know. And I'll ask the clerk to lead the roll call for our policy committee members.
Councilmember Mark Joseph. Supervisor Amber Manfree.
Here.
Mayor Pierre Washington.
Here.
Councilmember Pat Eklund.
Present.
Supervisor Stephanie Moulton Peters.
Present.
Supervisor Mitch Mashburn.
Here.
Mayor Andrea Soares.
Here.
Supervisor John Vasquez. Councilmember Victoria Fleming is absent. Supervisor David Rabbit, absent. Vice Chair Hermosillo.
Here.
Chair Lucan.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Also, we'll just do some additional introductions from our various partner agencies, executive directors, general managers, and all those of the expanded partnership. So why don't we just go around the room here at the dais so everybody can introduce themselves or those that are joining online.
Andrew Vermeer, MTC.
David Ambiel, Caltrans.
Ann Richmond, Transportation Authority of Mer.
James Cameron, Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authorities.
Eddie Cummins, SMART.
Nick Burton, Solano Transportation Authority.
Danielle Schmitz, Napa Valley Transportation Authority.
All right, we'll go online to our others on from our expanded partnership. Well, I see Buffy from the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria. Oh, hey, Buffy.
Good morning. Thank you. Buffy McQuillan, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for Great Rancheria.
All right, and Shane Trimmer, if we could unmute. There we go.
Hi, good morning. Sorry to be added as a panelist. Shane Trimmer with Congressman Huffman's office.
All right, and it looks like we have Tiffany Jones, District Director for Assignment Member Lori Wilson as well. We'll look through the expanded partnership folks and get you all in here as panelists. And if there's any others, go ahead and please raise your hand. We'll get you in here as panelists. All right. Tiffany, did you want to say a quick hello?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good to see everybody. Happy New Year.
All right. We'll kind of keep working through that list. Maybe we'll come back just so we keep our meeting going. Jennifer, you want to provide any instructions for those that are joining remotely today, and then we'll come back to the rest of our partners here.
For those attending in person, the chair will invite audience members to speak during public open time or when a specific agenda item is being considered. Participants joining via Zoom may speak during the designated time for each item by using the raised hand feature or dialing *9, then waiting to be called upon. Please note that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also really want to recognize and thank NAPA for hosting our meeting today. I'll turn it over if you want to maybe provide any remarks. So just as our host, and thanks for opening up your doors for us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for being here. This is the Saukville Gateway Transit Center. So Napa Valley Transportation Authority is also the sole transit operator in Napa County, and so we have our Vine bus system. So you might hear some buses pulling in and out. And thank you for all making the trip here. We encourage you to stay in the city of Napa, head over to Oxbow or downtown Napa, and have lunch. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we move on to our consent calendar, I think maybe we had one or two other members from our expanded partnership. If you're there and you've been promoted to panelists and you want to unmute and say a quick hello. If not, that is okay too. We see you there. I see Brendan Sweeney from Congressman Thompson's office. And oh, there we are. Welcome. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our consent calendar. First order of business. Any committee questions, comments on this? Any public comment? Not seeing any. Do we have a motion?
Second.
So we have a motion by Supervisor Mashburn, a second by Councilmember Eklund. We'll call a voice vote or a roll call vote on this.
Councilmember Eklund? Councilmember Joseph?
Aye.
Supervisor Manfree?
Aye.
Supervisor Mashburn? Supervisor Moulton Peters?
Yes.
Mayor Swart? Mayor Washington?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hermosillo?
Yes.
Chair Lucan?
Yes. Thank you. That passes. Item number 3, always the favorite item of all outgoing chairs, is the reorganization for the next chair and vice chair. Been more than happy to do this for this past year, but also ready to hand it off. So we entertain actually, is there any public comment on this? We'll start there. Right. Is there maybe some discussion or anybody that might be interested in stepping up for this next year in the chair? I'll turn to our vice chair. I don't know if you want to make any comments as vice chair.
Yes, I think that it would be super helpful if one of my colleagues in another county was able to be chair, happy to be vice chair. I'm hopeful that Supervisor Mashburn would be willing to be chair. There's a lot of work that has gotten done on this policy committee that still needs to get done, and I'd love some support from another county.
I don't have a problem with that at all. We can fit that in and we can make that work if that's okay with everybody. You know, I'm more than willing. Yeah.
All right.
So I'll move Mitch as chair and you as vice chair.
Perfect.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Eklund. Do we have a second? We have a second. Thank you. We'll go ahead and call the vote.
Oh, too many mics are on.
Oh, too many mics are on.
Councilmember Eklund?
Aye.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Supervisor Manfree?
Aye.
Supervisor Mashburn?
Aye.
Supervisor Moulton Peters?
Yes.
Mayor Soers?
Yes.
Mayor Washington?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hermosillo?
Yes.
Chair Lucan?
Yes, that passes. Thank you, Supervisor Mashburn and Supervisor Hermosillo. With the next quarterly meeting, it'll all be yours. So we'll keep moving through the agenda for today. First up, item 4.1, communications. I'll welcome Bart up to give us an update.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I've actually got some slides to show you today. So we'll move swiftly through them. Today, we're going to be talking about construction updates. We've got a couple of projects out there out on the road and talking a little bit about the storm that happened in January. We've got some beautiful sun out here today. Napa's beautiful, but January is a little challenging. So if we can go to the next slide. I'm going to be covering the CAP-M project, pavement rehabilitation, which is wrapping up this month, and our exciting new Fairgrounds Drive diverging diamond interchange, and then talking about the storm. So let's go right to it. Okay, that's just kind of a quick construction shot of the CAPM project. One of the things we've been doing from a communication standpoint is making sure the public understands that these aren't long-term or interim projects. These are maintenance projects. State Route 37 is open. And so this project has been replacing a median barrier that was old concrete with a new standard. It's wrapping up in the next couple of weeks. We still have a couple of interim closures on the connector ramp that's going to be going from westbound 37 onto northbound 101, but those are daytime closures that are between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And then we'll be done with that one. So that'll be behind us. The other project, though, that we've got going, go to the next slide, is Fairgrounds Drive Diverging Diamond Project. And if you go through this part of Low, you see a lot of work going on. It's kind of exciting. My brother actually texts me in the morning, I see excavators. So this one is currently the contractor, Bay Cities, has been doing a fantastic job. They're doing work in both phase 2 and phase 4 to catch up a little bit with some delays that happened because of the weather. So we are still on schedule for looking at shifting into the Diverging Diamond interchange alignment this April. So in March, you'll start to see some media work from my team prepping for the public to be going into this. We've got a fantastic animation that we've shown in previous policy committee meetings that we're going to be pushing out there a little bit more through the media to get people ready for it. Those are our construction projects, and that project should be wrapping up in June. So moving on, because I know we want to keep it going. The next slide should show flooding. So we did have flooding happen this January that basically closed the route westbound direction or eastbound direction for about 11 hours. And so this slide shows the two locations where it happened. The Marin area, we've seen, we don't see the Vallejo area happening as much. And so the reason for it is kind of like a perfect storm. Whenever we see king tides happening at the same time, we see an atmospheric river or heavy rainfall, then our maintenance teams, Caltrans maintenance teams, get ready to provide mitigation for flooding. In this case, I believe we had a supermoon, or like we had lions, tigers, and bears basically coming at us for this one. So we did see some flooding happening on the Vallejo side. On the Marin side, because there are levees there, the maintenance team can do pumping and other things to clear the area. And on the Vallejo side, where this took place, there's nowhere to pump the water. So we basically had to wait for the waters to subside. So the next few slides that we'll just run through quickly will give you an idea of what the storm waters look like and how they were impassable. These first ones are in Sonoma. So we can go through this one, Sonoma, the next one. That one gives you a little more idea of the debris that's left behind that we have to clean up before we can put the road back in service. Keep going, please. Okay, again, that's Sonoma. And then if we flip over to Vallejo, that's also Sonoma. You see a lot of debris on the Vallejo side, and we literally had to have maintenance out there kind of make a judgment call on when we could reopen the route. Next one. Okay, so the next slides that we put together are kind of take you to that question. Well, the interim project does have a little bit of a profile improvement, and I'll have Javier here really close by to keep me honest on the engineering. I just play an engineer on TV, but basically what we see there, the improvements for the project, raising the profile about a foot, you can kind of see what that looks like in cross section, along with improvements that will be made, enhancements that will be made to Strip Marsh East, would have likely greatly improved what the impact would have been for this particular flood. But we can't say that it would have completely mitigated. If you want to go to the next slide. There you can see the debris and that type of stuff might have been held to a minimum. It would have probably reduced the amount of time that the route was closed. The route was closed for approximately 11 hours, but we can't say for sure that it would have completely mitigated this particular flood, but it definitely would have improved it. And Javier, as the project manager, anything you want to add to that?
Sure, Bart, thank you.
Yeah, another improvement as part of this project is we're doing embankment improvements. So in some sections, we'll have an embankment confinement system at the edges, and in other sections, we'll have a pile-supported retaining wall. So that would itself act as a shield to protect the pavement section. So here, it's sort of exposed to damage on the pavement from the flooding. So that's another improvement that you would see as part of this project.
Okay. So wrapping up from a communication standpoint, on the construction projects, our primary public communication has been through traffic advisories and through social media. In Vallejo, where we've got the diverging diamond interchange, we've been working closely with the CVO to help the Crest community understand what the impacts potentially will be. Obviously, we've got big barriers that are in place there right now. Did you want to say something about Strip Marsh East, Jeanette?
Why, yes, thank you, Bart. I just want to point out that this particular location also has a nature-based solution that will help attenuate storm surge. And so that's something that will also add roadway resilience as well as inherent ecological benefits. So that's a plus plus.
Awesome. Thanks for stepping up, Jeanette. So we felt like we would share that in the communications portion of our show because it's a natural question that comes up given the fact that we lost the route again this year. And with that, that's everything we have going on in communication.
Thank you, Bart. Any questions? Mayor Source.
Well, thank you for the update. And we had talked a little bit last year about, especially in Vallejo and Solano County, the concerns over the tolling and kind of regrouping and doing some more outreach in the community, given that the polling that informed this project was done many years ago, and the residents did say they valued addressing the congestion. Although they didn't like the idea of a toll, the highest priority was to reduce the congestion, and we wanted to kind of loop back and make sure everybody was aware of kind of the reasoning behind this and the work that had been done. And you know, given the flooding that just happened, I kind of wanted to elevate that again, because I think that put in the forefront of everybody's minds. I certainly got some communications about it in Vallejo of like, my God, how quickly can we get this project going? We clearly need it. You know, the interim project, like, would we love a raised causeway? Great. Yeah. You know, would we love to try to get funding to, you know, do it without having to toll us? Like, yes, but like, how quickly can we do this? So I kind of wanted to raise that and see if other folks in other counties have gotten similar comments from residents of just this flooding kind of accentuated that we really don't have a choice but to do something as soon as possible. And, you know, I hope we can continue those plans to re-engage the community in Vallejo, because there very much still are concerns about the tolling and the equity of the tolling. And we need to have those conversations, but there's also a renewed urgency of like, we're dealing with flooding issues that aren't going anywhere, and we can't really wait much longer before we address this.
Yes. Did anybody else want to comment before I respond?
I see Supervisor Moulton Peters has her hand up, but in relation to this, do you want to speak now, Supervisor?
I'll wait until Bart's done.
Okay. Then yes, we do plan on a follow-up. The listening session that you both hosted was, I think, very effective in the Vallejo community. Nick and I were just talking, and Jeanette were talking earlier this morning about getting together to start preparing an agenda for having a public outreach event in Vallejo. I think we had initially said the April timeframe or the spring timeframe was what we were gunning for, but we need to get together and develop that. But we do intend to have that comeback meeting this year.
Additional question? Oh, actually, we'll go Supervisor Moulton Peters.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Lucan. Two things. We certainly felt a sense of urgency in Marin up and down the 101 corridor. So we are having similar conversations about what can we do quickly to shore up the areas of 101 that flood. And then the second comment, I wanted to thank Jeanette Wiseman for bringing up the strip marsh improvements. This has to be considered part of the road project because they really do work in tandem to address future flooding. So every time we talk about road project, let's talk about the strip marsh improvements too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saving me on that one, Jeanette.
Mayor Washington.
Yeah, to Mayor Source's question, have we received calls or people talking to us about that? I get one every night It's my wife. She travels that thing every day, and she tells me she's willing to pay whatever it costs, so she doesn't have to reroute. So thank you.
Any other committee member or expanded partnership member questions, comments on the communications update or the flooding? I'm not seeing any. We'll go to quickly go to public comment. Is there any in the room? Any online?
I don't see any hands raised at this time, Chair.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Bart. Appreciate the update. We'll go ahead and move
Thanks,
on
everybody.
to our next item, which is item 4.2, a near-term Sears Point to Mare Island improvement update. I'll welcome Kevin Chen and Javier from Caltrans. Welcome.
Morning, members of the Policy Committee. My name is Kevin Chen with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. I'm joined by Javier Mandeville of Caltrans. So we are here to provide you with an update on the near-term. We're here to provide you with an update on the near-term Sears Point to Mare Island Improvement Project. Next slide, please. So today's focus is going to be on construction package 1. Now I just want to provide a little refresher on the construction packages as shown in this exhibit to the right. So for the purpose of project delivery and based on availability of funding, we are going to divvy up the project in 3 phases for delivery. The first one, as shown in red, originally would start from west of 121 to about a mile east of 121. And one of the major components of the first work package is to replace the Tole Creek Bridge. So that's package 1. Package 2 is to really build out the rest of the eastbound direction. That would include the Strip Marsh East that we just talked about, as well as initiate tolling on the corridor. Phase 3 is to finish out the project in the westbound direction, including initiating tolling in the westbound direction. So that's the overall construction phasing. But today, again, the focus is on package 1. So today we'll talk a little bit more about the updated project cost, our funding status, schedule, and an update on the CMGC process. Next slide, please. So since we last met in November, one of the major updates that we need to provide you today is the construction cost estimate, which had increased very substantially since the last meeting. So we're looking at the previous estimate back in 2024, and we're looking at only construction capital costs. For package 1, it was in the order of $93 million. And in November, that estimate went up to $155 million for package 1. Again, just construction only. And the difference is more than $62 million. So this created a huge challenge for us because this is significantly higher than the funding that we had previously secured as planned for package 1. Again, the numbers that we're showing on screen is for the original package 1 limit from west of 121 all the way to 1 mile past to the east side of 121. Next slide, please. So in terms of what's driving up the costs, one of the primary areas is really due to structural items. And that really predicated on the subsurface conditions on this corridor, which really sits on a very thick layer of young bay muds. So through more detailed geotechnical studies throughout the design process, as well as more engineering calculations that was needed leading up to the 95% milestone that we talked about last time, it was really determined that the sheet pile walls that was previously proposed would not be sufficient and would result in excessive deflection on the roadway, causing potential unsafe conditions. And because of that, we are moving to installing or constructing retaining walls instead, along with the new bridge at Tole Creek. And really, that's really necessary to provide a safe roadway for our travelers. So that's the bulk of it. And in addition, the groundwater level is pretty high on this corridor, and the amount of dewatering effort that's needed for the construction is also going to be very substantial, higher than anticipated before. And In terms of the widening that's going to be needed as part of the project, we're going to be, it won't be conventional fill, but it will be lightweight fill, engineered lightweight fill, which was added to the cost increase. So all of that adds up to a lot of cost increase. It's not a surprise that as design progress, and especially in the recent years, that construction costs have been going up, but this increase is substantial. Next slide, please. So since November, we've been working very closely with the team, with Caltrans, with all the partners, and really trying to come up with ideas on how we can really proceed with package one. Because it is important in many ways that I'll explain later. And we kind of have a two-pronged approach. One is what improvements can we defer, based on the funding that we have currently, what improvements can we defer to package two while still maintaining independent utility, so independent utility for this package one. For example, we can't build half a bridge. That's obvious. So we need to be able to construct something that means something. And one of the areas that a major area that we've came to is we're going to defer most of the improvements west of 121. We know that that's definitely not ideal because that would mean that we're cutting out some of the benefits for folks traveling eastbound and going north on 121 because we won't be able to extend the left turn lane. So some of those benefits are not gonna be able to realize until we deliver package two later. But that would help us cut down the cost and still for us to be able to maintain independent utility going east of 121 and be able to deliver the new bridge. So that's one area. Then the second part of the two-prong approach is that within the scope of work that we cannot defer, how can we reduce that cost? And one of those is actually on one of the retaining walls, retaining wall number 7 in the eastbound direction, that the original proposal was for a retaining wall, but because we do have right-of-way there within Caltrans jurisdiction, so we can replace that with a slope protection system instead, which would cut down the cost quite a bit by a few $1 million. So that kind of help us narrow down the gap in terms of the funding. The third is if we can reuse the excavated materials, because we're going to be excavating a lot of materials from the Tulare Creek Bridge replacement, and really find opportunities instead of hauling them far away to other places, find opportunities to reuse them nearby Highway 37, which hopefully will be a win-win. It can help us reduce costs. And then, as we continue to explore that opportunity with other partners, hopefully it will be a benefit for them as well. Last but not least is on the Tulare Creek Bridge. We're going to not include a polyester concrete overlay. That would also save the cost a little bit. That's something nice to have, but not necessary. Next slide, please. So with this two-prong approach, in terms of deferring the scope of work as well as reducing the cost on some of the necessary scope components, our current revised total costs for construction is $190 million for this first work package. Now, this includes the capital construction cost as well as construction support cost, which is also very substantial. That kind of goes proportional with the capital cost. It also includes some of the right-of-way items like off-site stormwater treatment, incidental permitting mitigations, and public access improvements. It also accounts for project risk as we get into construction because replacing a bridge is going to be complicated and dealing with the retaining walls and the subsoil condition out there. So we do need to make sure that we have some contingency to account for unexpected conditions come the actual construction phase. So right now we are aiming for a total cost of $190 million to account for all those things. Our committed funding is at $135 million, and these include $20 million of SHOP funds that Caltrans had as part of the improvements to extend the eastbound lane. We have RM3, Regional Measure 3 funds. We have OBEC 3 funds. We also have $50 million from the CTC LTCAP grant that we worked very hard to secure, as well as $20 million from the Protect funds that was also competitive. So that leaves us with a gap of $55 million that we need to close, even with this reduced scope for package one. So that's still a substantial gap that we all need to work towards to closing in the coming months. Next slide, please. So the unfortunate part is that we don't have a lot of time to work on this. This project has a pretty hard deadline of achieving what's called the ready to list milestone, basically for Caltrans to get everything ready and have the package ready to go out to bid. And one of the key requirements is that we need to have funding fully secured for the $190 million that we talked about earlier. Because if we don't do that, the funding that I mentioned earlier in terms of what's been secured, including the LTCAP funding, then the PROTECT funding, and Caltrans Shop funds, we're going to risk losing all of those funds. And it adds up to $91 million that we work very hard to secure. So if we don't meet the RTL deadline, we're going to lose those funding. I have not listed here, but also keep in mind that we had also secured $70 million, $70 million from CTC on SB1 funding last year. That's also very competitive. That's for package two. Now, package two is really contingent on the delivery of package one, because we need to have the new Toilet Creek Bridge in order to complete the capacity, the lane addition for the entire corridor. So package two is going to continue on that. So that's also potentially at risk if we can't close the funding gap for package one. So I want to mention that as well. I think it is still good that we have a very strong partnership here. I think everyone recognizes the value of this near-term project and the multi-benefits that it would bring. So all the partners are still on board for us to move forward with this. And we actually want to hear from you all today as well, that moving forward with package one is going to be crucial. And really the task and the challenge for us is to really find ways to close the $55 million funding gap. We started the conversation with all the partner agencies already, really going with the spirit of one corridor, one team, many solutions. We've been working on this since 2015 or so, so it's been more than a decade of partnership that we have. It's a very significant challenge. I don't think any single agency can solve this $55 million question, but I think it's going to require all of us to work together at the regional level, the state level, the county level to really make this happen and try to get to that the April RTL date. Next slide, please. So I'll wrap up my part by just really reiterating that the near-term project brings a lot of benefits. Even this construction package one is going to bring a lot of benefits. The first is congestion relief. Even though we are not going to be able to complete the full eastbound direction, but one of the key elements of this construction package one is that we're going to extend the eastbound lane drop. For those of you that drive this corridor knows that in the eastbound direction, there's a lane drop right after the intersection at 121 today. And because of that abrupt movement, right after the traffic signal, it really creates a huge bottleneck. So by extending the lane with the new Toilet Creek Bridge and really bring it further out to the east, it can really ease the conflict, if you will, at the intersection with the smart railroad crossing and the signal there, and really help increase throughput in that area. So that will bring some congestion reduction in the eastbound direction. The second is resilience. Bart and Javier had talked about this earlier. With this first construction package, we are going to raise the profile at kind of throughout some of the low spots around Tubbs Island. So that's going to reduce flooding risk. And then also the retaining walls that we'll be putting up along with the new bridge are going to be at slightly higher elevation. It's also going to help with reducing flooding risk. We're not going to be able to eliminate the problem, but just think about that if we don't do something, it's only going to get worse. So we have to do what we can to help reduce flooding risk in the near term as we work towards a long-term solution. Last but not least is ecology. With the new Toilet Creek Bridge, we are really going to be able to open up the channel and really help enable a lot of the restoration that's planned in this area, hundreds of acres of restoration being planned. But without the new bridge, that will not be possible. And I'll just remind folks that when we started the project in 2023, when we cleared the environmental phase, it was just a simple widening of the existing Tulare Creek Bridge in order to accommodate the new lane. But it was really all the resource agencies and the regulatory agencies that really urged us to consider replacing a bridge because it would bring the multi-benefit to the project with the restoration. And now we are really, we're sticking to the commitment in terms of bringing those benefits, environmental benefits, as the first construction work package. And so really reiterating our commitment to the resource and the environmental agencies on this. So with that, I'm gonna let Javier give us a update on CMGC.
Next slide, please. So as I've mentioned to you all before, we procured a pre-construction service contract on this project, and we've selected Kiewit as the construction manager for that. They've been really instrumental in providing input, especially for constructability and means and methods, which has really aided our coordination with permitting agencies for identifying impacts as well. And overall, it's led us to coming up with a better designed product as well. Unfortunately, we weren't able to agree on price for package one, so Tulare Creek Bridge replacement and the intersection improvements. So we're pivoting to design bid build, and we're going to advertise for low bid for that first construction package. For packages 2 and 3, we're still planning on working with Kiewit. We'll have more time to incorporate innovation. Like Kevin highlighted in the previous part of the presentation, we're sort of at the 11th hour, so there's not a whole lot of time to make any changes. And we're sort of stuck with the cost estimates that we've developed. But as I said, we're looking forward to working closely with them on the subsequent packages 2 and 3. And hopefully we'll be able to agree on price and work with them on construction for those packages. That concludes the presentation. We'll take questions.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Javier. I'll look to my colleagues here. Start with you have Councilmember Eklund.
Yeah, I was going to wait, but that's
Oh,
okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. It sounds like that the delay in the phase 1 package, is that going to extend the timeline for the overall construction of that particular phase or phase 2 or phase 3? I'm not sure I quite understand any particular delays because of the inability to, because of the funding increase.
Yeah, if I understand you correctly, you wanted to see if there's a schedule, basically an overall project delivery delay for the project. I think so for us, we're trying to stick with the schedule that we've been trying to accomplish for package 1 because the April date that we talked about before, we're trying to maintain that date so that we don't lose funding. So we are still sticking with that schedule and try to get it to ready to list and get it ready for advertisement by April or so that we don't lose funding. I think that the risk here is really if we cannot bridge that funding gap, we're going to lose all those funding, and that's going to be a real big hit to not just package 1, but the rest of the project. But so far, we are not proposing a schedule or delay for package 2 and 3. As Javier said, we are still going to continue to work with the CMGC, the consultant, to really help us come up with innovative ideas to keep the cost down for those. And like I said, we did secure $70 million of SB1 funding last year for package 2. But we'll need to continue to work on that funding plan for package 2 and 3. But right now, we are still working towards the schedule that we had before.
My concern, though, is that if the delay does affect the funding for phase 1, what options do we have? Can we move some of the money from phase 2 to phase 1, or are the grants specific for those particular aspects of phase 2?
Yeah, unfortunately, the funding, the SB1 funding that was specific for phase 2, the application was tied to the benefits of phase 2, not phase 1. And then it was an approval through the CTC. Yeah.
So I don't know about the counties, but I know that at least the cities, we are very limited on the monies that are available. So I guess it would be nice to know whether or not because it says that they're going to need to have more money from the state, the region, and the counties. So do each of the counties have enough additional funds to help bridge the gap? And what is the distribution anticipated? How much is going to be expected from the counties in order to help bridge that gap? Because I know, Novato, as Eric knows, we don't have any extra funds to be able to provide for this. So can you help us understand where the money is going to come from the counties?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, it's a really big challenge that's in front of all of us, and we don't have a lot of time to solve it. I'm not sure that we're trying to solve it today in this forum. We've been having conversations with the partners. I think we're going to continue those conversations. There's not a specific split or target at this point, but I think that's something that we need to continue to work with Caltrans and all the partners on with MTC. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Eklund. Supervisor Mashburn, and then we'll go to Councilmember Joseph.
So I can't speak for all the counties, but I can share with you a little bit about our county, right? Because we just talked about this and we talked about our budget. We talked about all those things. I got a county where right now we're in the middle of labor negotiations. Everybody saw all the strikes going on in Solano County. They saw the issues around the funding and what we have and don't have. Because of HR 1, we're facing the potential of having to close our health clinics, which would endanger the health services for 33,000 people in my county. Counties all around me, Contra Costa and others, are looking at layoffs right now. So counties do not have money. So if somebody's going to come around with their hat in their hand and say, "Hey, counties, you need to pony in millions of dollars," then we're dead in the water, because we have to look at our constituents in the county and say, "Hey, we have basic human needs that we have to take care of before we can take care of traffic."
Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, to start off with, this gap is based on new estimates, not necessarily a bid. So theoretically, it could be worse or better. Moving to a design build, do you anticipate that making the actuals a little better than the estimate, or still you don't know until you open the bids? It's the first question.
Yeah, feel free to chime in, Javier. I guess we are seeing kind of a mixed environment. Some bids do come in higher and some bids come in lower. So I think that's a little bit hard to tell at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember Joseph, I think you're right on what you said at the end there. We won't know until we open the bid. Our estimate from Kiewit, the construction manager, it came in significantly higher, so we definitely wouldn't be able to fill that gap. I mean, the 55 million is a big enough challenge, so that's why we made the decision to just try low bid, which generally does come in lower than what a construction manager would come up with.
So that's one potential, I guess, hopefully something to be hopeful about. The second concern is, it seemed like this isn't just we put some estimates and then we refined it. It almost seems like maybe we should have done some of the geotechnical reports sooner rather than later, because it's as if the very approach to the project didn't pencil as you drill down. And I am also not an engineer, but imagine I am occasionally. So it seems to me that going forward, maybe we need to spend a little more money figuring out what we can and can't do as an engineering approach. And once we figure that feasibility, then go down the estimating path, rather than potentially saying, let's assume the best case scenario and here's what it might cost. And then as we get into it, we find out they're worse. So going forward, I hope we don't run into things like this, because it's going to be a challenge just pulling off 55 million. And then the last one is like everybody else is saying, nobody's got any money. But in discussions, is there some kind of a strategy? Is Caltrans going to pick up some of it, or is MTC going to pick up some of it? How much is going to trickle down to the local level? And just philosophically, if there's a way to tap into resources that are future oriented, as a rule, it's a lot easier to say you're not going to get what you thought next year is a better thing to be annoyed over than to say, can you write me a check for the gap today? So if that's any, if that's useful advice of any type, that would be my suggestion, that we look at future revenue sources and tap that rather than ask any of us to write a check, because I'm pretty sure, I don't think anybody's in a position to say, yeah, I can handle a little of this. So those are my suggestions and comments.
Thank you. Supervisor Manfree.
Thank you. So I guess I'll just follow on Commissioner Joseph's comments there, but this is going to be a hard sell to the people in Napa County. Napa Valley Transportation Authority members, a lot of, I mean, we represent American Canyon and all the cities up to Calistoga, and then a few people from the Board of Supervisors, 2 of us. And there's not a lot of constituents for our members who commute across Highway 37. So, so when it comes to getting the votes in that scenario, I just want to be clear that it's going to be difficult in that forum. And then I have some questions for our representative, Mr. Ambiel from Caltrans. I think it might be helpful for me, maybe helpful for others in the group, to hear from you about how Highway 37 fits into Caltrans's overall schema for managing climate change and sea level rise related impacts, because I know this is going to be a problem for Caltrans up and down the state. I know it's not just sea level rise, it's also more frequent intense storms and landslides and flooding. You know, there's all kinds of stuff. But as far as, as much as you can, it'd just be helpful to know, like, where does Highway 37 rank in its level of importance? And then I guess relatedly to the funding, do you have any examples or do you see any possibilities for partnering with resource agencies? Because there's a co-benefit here. And as our presenters pointed out, that was a big part of the reason why this project became so much more expensive, was meeting those co-benefits, which I'm here for. That's great. And it's like, also, if we're going to those lengths to do the multi-benefit project, can we get multiple funding sources commensurate?
So there was a lot to unpack there. But I will say this, the Bay Area, so District 4 here at Caltrans, the 9 Bay Area counties, we have the most miles of vulnerable freeway to sea level rise. It is something that we recognize. There have been a number of studies, as is the challenge for all of the Bay Area. Being on the commission with BCDC, it's not just freeways, there's a lot of local areas that are going to be threatened by sea level rise as well. I think you bring up a really good point. Something that we've recently started talking about is how can our sister agency, CNRA, maybe play a role in this with some funding. We are, with this project, MTC and the partners, putting quite a bit in for Tulare Creek Bridge in order to create more opportunities for ecological restoration to the north of the roadway there, Strip Marsh East, as Jeanette had mentioned earlier. And so these things definitely give us cause to speak with CNRA to find out if there are any other opportunities within the environmental community for grants, things of that nature. And, this for us in the Bay Area, I would say is, and maybe up and down the state, one of our first really major projects where we are partnering in the environmental opportunities sit hand in hand with us as we're doing a transportation project. And so I think you hit the nail on the head. Is there an opportunity for them to partake in some of the funding? So something we have to look at for sure.
Mayor Source.
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with what's been said. It seems like the state and federal government are the most fruitful sources of funding for stuff like this. Obviously, the federal situation is probably not that great. Probably want to look at the state. And then, of course, I'm thinking about ways that we can be creative, not saying I haven't vetted any of these thoughts. I'm just sort of sharing them as they come. But, there's a mention here of fill for the highway. I don't know if that's something we have to purchase, but Vallejo right now is doing a lot of hustling to get money for dredging, and we have a dredging company. And, some of the fill that we get from dredging is somewhat contaminated. Some of it's clean, but I'm wondering, even the stuff that's contaminated, can that go under a freeway? Can we save money on the fill by partnering with our dredgers or with Vallejo and using fill from dredging? Can we create something on the road that's revenue generating? One of the things that came up in our town hall, a attendee mentioned the potential of maybe putting solar panels somewhere along the freeway and either bonding against that future revenue or partnering with a private company to get a concession from them out of future revenue. Just sort of those types of creative financing mechanisms where, maybe nobody's ever done it before, but nobody's been in this situation before. We're kind of in unprecedented times. So, yeah, I think we all need to come together to see what funding we can get from the state and what funding we can get regionally, but we may also want to look at ways we can kind of hustle and lower the costs locally and kind of be creative. So I'm happy to be part of that, however I and Vallejo can help in that work.
Thank you. And any other questions or we'll go to Supervisor Hermosillo and then go back to Councilmember Eklund.
Yeah, I agree. I think looking at other funding sources and options and looking at it creatively is helpful. I think that we should also remember that 37 is vital to all of our counties: Marin, Sonoma, Solano, Napa, all of us. We have a labor force that goes back and forth. And so some of our counties may not touch 37 as much, but we all have significant impact. And so I'd like to, the tagline there, right? One altogether, one solution. Don't quote me on it, but I think that's what we need to keep in mind to look at these creative options. Thanks.
Councilmember Eklund.
Yeah, I was just hoping that we could get an answer to a Mayor Source suggestion, because I think looking at ways to help reduce the cost by collaborating with counties and cities, I think it could be helpful. Because frankly, I totally agree that all of us are very dependent upon Highway 37. And having this unexpected increase in the costs, we need to look at ways to try to get it back down again, because there's a shortage of money everywhere. And so maybe we need to reduce our what we see in the project. Maybe we need to cut it back a little bit. But I think that the people are going to get really super frustrated that every time we start working on Highway 37, it seems like the cost keeps going up and up and up. So much so from what the estimates were. So I think at some point the public's going to not be as supportive. So I think we need to look at ways to try to reduce the cost without adversely impacting the project. But if we have to, I think we need to start looking at that.
Any additional information?
Sure. Yeah, I could address Mayor Source's first suggestion of the thing about the fill. So as Kevin mentioned, as one of the cost increase items is the requirement of lightweight fill. And the reason we need that is because of the muddy conditions and the settlement that you see out there, right? So you need a special type of fill in order to prevent the settlement. But we have looked into doing it the other way around, where we sell or we find another use for the excavated soil. So we have worked with, or we have been in contact with Vallejo Sanitation and other folks that are working on levee projects as potential buyers, I guess, of our fill, so we don't have to take it, or of our excavation, so that we don't have to off-haul it to a landfill, which will reduce some costs. So we are looking into things like that. But the point's well taken, Mayor Source. Like we do need to start thinking creatively to figure out a solution for this. I don't know if Kevin, you want to add to that?
Supervisor Mashburn?
Yeah, I'm just gonna put this out there, because I put it out at MTC and at STA and some of our other, transit folks. Everybody, I've talked to, Caltrans about it. When we talk about this funding gap, we're talking about leaning a lot on, our residents and the services for our residents and cuts we got to make to pay for it and all those things. But there's another, entire group that uses this corridor significantly, and that's commercial and trade. And when we're talking about having to carry part of that burden, I think part of that burden needs to be pushed back to those folks. Right now, when we talk about toll lanes, they don't pay anything because they don't get to use the lane. But if there's a way to make it economically viable to go across 37 in a toll lane and for commercial vehicles to utilize that, and time is money in delivery, then I think that's something that should be looked at. When they cross our bridges, I can tell you from Bafa and Bada that they pay by the axle. They don't pay the $8 that we all pay as commuters or the $4 that our low income folks pay. They pay by the axle. So some of those trucks are paying $40 in order to cross that bridge. I think it's time that industry that is taking profits from this, whose stockholders are taking profits from this, have to pay back to utilize those roads and to be able to access those routes. That entire north coast of California, from San Rafael or from Marin all the way up past Eureka, is accessed via 101. And there's only 2 points to access 101 viably from the Port of Oakland or from I-5, and that's the San Rafael Bridge or Highway 37. Or they can come all the way down through the entire bay and come up through San Francisco and 101, but remember, time is money, right? They can drive all the way up 5 and come across 20 over by Clear Lake, but I'm scared to do that in my car, much less a big rig, right? So these are vital corridors to trade, vital corridors to industry. Let them carry some weight and let them carry their water so that our citizens don't have to figure a way.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Hermosillo, or Vice Chair?
I think we can connect offline. I have someone in mind that is looking for some fill on that corridor. So,
Councilmember Joseph.
If I can piggyback off of Director Mashburn, there's also a lot of federal funding that is focused on freight and goods moving and so forth. So I'm not opposed to saying that the private sector that's benefiting ought to contribute, but there may also be some grant funding that admittedly in 3 months you can't pull off. But going forward again, that may be an angle to pursue in terms of funding for subsequent phases and so on. So I really endorse the idea that everybody, including the environmental and conservation groups, if this is a multi-benefit project, then I think we need to look at multiple funding sources. I was going to read the tagline here. It's one corridor, one team, many solutions. I think we need to talk about many funding sources. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions, comments? Okay, just 2 quick questions as a follow-up for me. What percentage design are we at for Project 1 at this stage?
100.
Full, okay. And as we've gotten to this point, I'm curious, through the process and the additional learnings, is there anything that we can also take with us, later on down the road when we get to the ultimate? I mean, as costs are increasing for this, have we determined anything that will be able to be maybe, reused or repurposed as we're at 100% design now?
The subsurface investigation, the drilling we did, we asked them to go a little deeper so that could help inform our future long-term projects. So that's one thing. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what else, but Yeah, we're doing our best to repurpose information they're gathering right now for the future long-term causeway.
Gotcha. In terms of, future piers and what's going to be needed, we pretty much know everything we need to know underground at this point, we think?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And then to the phasing of it, obviously, yeah, project 1, project 2, project 3, it wouldn't make sense to move forward with project 2 if project 1 is still the bottleneck there. General thoughts, if we don't want to lose money for project 2, would we be able to move forward with project 2 while we still try to find project 1, or would that just not be recommended under? I just want to make sure we're not losing the kind of the cascading effect of potential losing funds. I mean, at some point, you got to get all of them done to truly remove all remaining bottlenecks.
Yeah, I think we need some time to sort that out, unfortunately, because again, package 2, that 70 million from SB1 funding was really advocated on the full benefits that package 2 would be getting, assuming package 1 would have been done already. Otherwise, you will still have the bottleneck as you said.
Yep. Okay. Well, hopefully we don't have to get to that point, but yeah, if we're looking at losing maybe potential funds for multiple projects, maybe that could be a future discussion in terms of, do we proceed with one knowing the impacts that will still remain if we don't get them all delivered. All right. With that, I'll look to public comment. See, is there any here in the room on this item? Don't see any in the room. I see a hand or two online. I'll have Jennifer unmute you and call you.
Dwayne, please unmute.
Does that work? I said, did I get unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all elected officials for being there and putting in good work on our behalf. I basically appreciated the pictures of the king tide that we saw that could close it temporarily. I'm glad that it wasn't a atmospheric river storm at the same day, but I think we can anticipate that in the future. And that doesn't even cover the sea level rise we're anticipating. I think it's past time we start planning a new route to cross the North Bay. We should build a whole new road significantly higher than that will be covered by sea level rise and atmospheric river. In the meantime, people on the East Coast are used to their equivalent of atmospheric river is a snowstorm, and they're closed down for a couple of days. And if once a month this is going to be closed down until we replan the whole thing, people should just get used to that and plan on it being closed one day a month until a couple of years, 5 years from now, when we get a new plan in place to actually build a road that we'll be able to stand up for 50 years of global warming. Thank you very much.
Kate Powers, please unmute.
Thank you. I do appreciate the looking at the cost increases of the interim project. I thought that was important. My comment from an environmental standpoint is I think that as we look at different changes in the construction, that environmental impacts to the adjacent marshes and things also need to be considered. So I don't know if there's any differences in impacts, but switching from the sheep piles to the retaining walls, and looking at dewatering and how much dewatering and what kinds of construction operation needs to happen for all that dewatering, and if there's any other things that will happen when all that dewatering is happening, and if there's any impacts from the lightweight fill versus the other type of fill, and then the polyester coat. I don't know if that was supposed to be help with stormwater or stormwater treatment mitigation, but all of those things that are changing that were evaluated in different reports previous reports, if there's big changes, I think need to be reevaluated in terms of environmental impacts as well. Thank you.
Tom Conlon, please unmute.
Thank you for the opportunity here. Tom Conlon in Sonoma Valley, speaking as an individual. You know, I've been monitoring this process for a couple of years now, and I have to say I've been anticipating that this was going to be very difficult to do. And I really appreciate the work that Kevin and Javier have put in. Obviously, their teams are working hard to try and make this work. But to keep pouring good money into the muck of the North Bay there, just starting to feel like we could have seen this coming. And today's news that the king tide that we just experienced, that Lions, Tigers, and Bears event would still have impacts even after this interim project were to be completed. This is kind of piling up. And from my perspective, this seems like what happens when we just run up against some hard realities of the limits of our physical environment to support these imaginaries that we have, which is, in my opinion, trying to keep Highway 37 open as it was. So I'm inclined to agree with Dwayne, previous public speaker. We're running up against this April deadline. If we miss it, then maybe we do have an opportunity to pull back and plan a more long-term fix to this problem. If we somehow do manage to materialize funds in that short time frame, I don't know. I'm wondering if that's really the best prioritization of funds. And finally, I'll just say, to ask the environmental advocates to try and justify this project on environmental benefits, let's look at what it really is. It's a roadway capacity increase in that particular area. Yes, we can make the VMT impact. We can use some magic and apply it to the rest of the Bay Area, and hopefully it goes down. But that's after the long-term benefits and tolling are fully in place, and we're a long way from that right now. So thank you for consideration of my comments this morning.
Thank you, Tom. Any other public comment online?
I don't see any additional
Seeing any?
hand raised.
All right, we'll go ahead and close that public comment. And we certainly have our work cut out for us over the next several months. So thank you so much for the report. And we'll go ahead and move on from this item on to the next one. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Javier. Although, Javier, I don't think you're going very far, because the next item, 4.3, long-term Novato Creek Bridge replacement.
All right, so this is our other major project along the corridor over on the Marin County side. As you all know, this is the first long-term ultimate resiliency program project that we have, which is to replace Novato Creek Bridge to an elevated structure that'll sustain projected year 2130 sea level rise. Next slide, please. So we have various funding sources, all from federal, state, local. I've covered them in detail in previous meetings, so I won't spend time, but we have a fully funded project. Next slide, please. Our schedule is largely driven by IIJA funding allocation requirements, which require us to complete the design by May of this year. We're on target for that. And then we'll be expected to start construction the following year in 2027. Next slide, please. One of the challenges for this project is our accelerated permitting schedule. So we do have quite a few permits on this project. In particular, the 404 and the biological opinions are what are, I guess, technically long lead permits from the feds. So We're working really closely with agency staff to make sure we give them everything they need to issue the permits. But yeah, just wanted to highlight that it is a compressed permitting timeline, and we do need to work together to make sure the project's successful. Next slide, please. I think that's it, actually. Great questions?
Any questions on this update? Councilmember Eklund.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on the uncertainty of the permits for Section 404 in the biological opinion?
Right. So the Section 404 application can't be deemed complete until we receive the biological opinions. So they're sort of tied together. And I guess with possible federal government shutdowns, right? I think the last one that happened didn't impact these agencies, but it's always a risk. You never know. It did happen, I think, late last year, and it already impacted our schedule because they didn't work for a month or two. So yeah, I guess that's sort of what I meant.
So having worked for the Army Corps and the US EPA, I'm very familiar with these permitting. So, but could you give me a little bit more information about this schedule for the biological opinion and who's working on it, and what are the concerns about getting that one completed?
We submitted our biological assessments late last year. Agency had some comments. We responded to them. So we're still, we're still working with them. Did you want to know who in particular from those agencies are working on issuing the permits?
So once since you submitted the information in late 2025, what is the schedule for the National Marine Fisheries Fish and Wildlife Service?
Well, we're hoping we've told them that we need to receive the permits this month, the BOs this month, but and they've said that they'd work with us, but historically they've taken longer to issue permits on different projects on 37. So
sure. Yeah. Can I add to your question, Councilmember
And you
Eklund?
can speak closer into the microphone.
Yes,
That'd be helpful. It's difficult to hear in this.
Sure. This is Ricky Gao from Caltrans. Just want to add some details about the NIMS permit. We submitted our permit late last year, like Javier said. They commented and we responded to them. However, we responded in early January. NIMS has only 2 staff is working on the entire state Caltrans project on their biological opinion permit. So, and they've been impacted by the federal shutdown last year. So after we responded early January, they still haven't deemed our permit complete because their staff has been stretched really thin. After they deemed complete, by statutory, they still have a few months to issue the permit. That's just by statutory. So if they deem complete in this month, by statutory, they have until June to issue the permit, which is beyond our funding allocation deadline. So that's why the NIMS permit is at a very high risk at this point. Like Javier said, we are working close with them, try to help them to accelerate the project or the permit issuance, but it's at a very high risk because our deadline is beyond their statutory. Their statutory timeline is beyond our deadline.
So if there's something that this board could do to help facilitate and urge the federal agencies to sort of prioritize these permit applications, please do not hesitate to include us in that effort if it would help.
Yes,
So
that will be really helpful us to elevate this urgent permit issuance to NIMS and also U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We'll reach out.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no others. I think we took public comment, or is there any public comment? I don't see any here. Not seeing any online. Thank you, Javier, for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll go ahead and move on to item 4.4, long-term project draft aesthetic master plan. And we got, I believe, Joaquin and Diana, both from Caltrans, joining us.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll get started here while Diana sets up over there. She's going to be sharing her laptop. And so, lighter fare for the next 10 minutes, guys. So we're going to be talking about the future aesthetics of State Route 37. So we'll get out of the pickle weeds right now and look at the long-term project. All right. So quickly, my name is Joaquin Pedron. I'm a senior landscape architect at Caltrans. I'm joined by Diana Pink on my staff, who is also a landscape architect at Caltrans and the technical lead for all things State Route 37 involved with landscape architecture, responsible for those wonderful 3D sections that you saw in Bartonet's presentation. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so back in May, we started this effort, and it was based on the wise recommendation and prompting by Andy Vermeer, understanding that over the next 25 years, we're going to be establishing this 21-mile corridor. And let's have some consistency across that thing, because there are risks in every time we do these little projects. As you see, the funding's challenging as every project comes up, we get through them. Is there consistency over this causeway? So it's not the Bay Bridge in one fell swoop, it's lots of little parts. So with that wonderful prompting and the fantastic support from Caltrans leadership, they funded an aesthetics master plan that we are pulling off. And so that was established with a working group. And so if we go to the next slide. Oh, really quick, let's stay on this slide for a second. I do want to emphasize that this is specifically for the long-term solution. And you see the near term on the right side there. And so this doesn't necessarily apply to interim projects, but it's for the long-term causeway when we have this structure elevated up approximately 30 feet in the air. Okay, next slide, please. There were some time constraints. So we started in May. We had to meet an October deadline that Javier was talking about with the first long-term project. We have a 1,000-foot section of the causeway that's being established right now. So we needed to come to a consensus with our working group on what those aesthetics were going to be, because this was going to set the precedent for the rest of the 21 miles of this corridor. So next slide. Here you see the outcome. So this is the final causeway design for that 1,000-foot section. That is the precedent-setting portion for the rest of the 21-mile corridor. So we established this with our working group, and you can see the working group on the bottom left there. And we consulted with them, and we went through different context review of the area, which Diana will walk us through quickly. And we also reviewed and got some input from SMART. So Bill Gamlin, he was fantastic and had some good comments. And then with the tribes. And so Great Rancheria, Buffy did and from Yojadehe, Gail had some fantastic input for us to include in the aesthetics master plan, which will be forthcoming. The final, I guess, edition of this thing is going to happen in the next couple of months, and it is all a digital deliverable, so a living document that we can modify as we move forward. And so you'll see the 6 different items up there, and these are things that the working group could make, they could make decisions on. And so this met the timeline for delivering on this, on the long-term project at Novato Creek Bridge. So you guys can look through that, but not to take up too much of Diana's time, we'll hand it over to you. And so what Diana will be showing is the story maps of the aesthetic master plan.
Thank you, Joaquin, and good morning, everyone. I will. Try to walk. Dramatic pause, there we go. So as Joaquin mentioned, we've created this aesthetic master plan as sort of a digital delivery, with our intention that this is a kind of a living, breathing document, understanding that the ultimate project has got a long time span. Certainly, we've just heard a lot about funding challenges and things. So knowing that that's going to happen and sort of leaving a little bit of flexibility as all these projects start to move forward. I mean, I think we're fingers crossed hoping for what, 2050 for the final ultimate project to be completed. So we're talking, you know, a 25-year span here. So we thought this was going to be an interesting and probably the best way to share this document with everyone. So kind of starting off, there's kind of our introduction story map. Basically, I like to think of this as sort of like our table of contents. So kind of introducing, you know, what our goals of this, like the goals for this aesthetic master plan, what the proposed project is, touching on sort of our stakeholder coordination and collaborations. Again, touching on sort of this long timeline, sort of the different phases of the projects, and then kind of really the meat of what this document is. So all these different story maps. So we'll be going through this kind of what's included here. So kind of our first major task was doing a sort of a context and existing visual inventory. So we went out there and documented and collected any visual or any elements that sort of had influence and impact on the visual environment. So we kind of started big picture. So we were looking at, you know, what's the regional context that 37 sits in, and then started to kind of zoom in more and more. So kind of what are the adjacent land uses, the existing adjacent land uses to the project? Is any of the corridor state scenic or county scenic highway or corridors? Is any of it classified landscape freeway that can have impact on visuals? And then we kind of took a look at the natural, cultural, and historic surroundings and settings. So I can just kind of burn through these quickly. And then we went through and basically did a lot of ground truthing. So we went out there from kind of the west end to the east end, stopping, taking pictures, and I won't spend the time to go through all of this, trying to capture sort of, you know, what is the environment? What do you see out there? What is the feeling that you have out there? And so then after gathering all this information, we shared this and put together a list of questions for our working group, a lot of who are actually sitting here behind me. We got some great feedback and input. We met all together. And then through that process, we developed this themes and values and aesthetic principles. So these are just sort of those like big picture kind of 80,000 foot ideas. They're kind of the foundations that we always want to be able to kind of, I guess, sort of our touchstone to go back to sort of, you know, what's really important. Like, what do we think is the most critical items out there in a visual context? So integration with the natural environment, sort of looking at that user-centered experience, cohesive, you know, having the corridor be kind of one idea, but allowing for sort of subtle shifts in, you know, like subtle shifts in different places. To me, the corridor has an overall character, but there are those differences. And so being able to celebrate those as we move through the various counties and sort of the different ecotypes. So we did the values and then the aesthetic principles, just sort of building off of those themes. And then as part of that themes and values, we also shared a bunch of different sort of alternatives for the causeway structure. I can share that quickly. So we kind of went through and said like, hey, you know, which of this do you like? You know, how do you like the pickets on the pedestrian rail? So we also sent that out to the working group, did another kind of survey list of questions, again, got great feedback. And so we've been building off of that into our design guidelines. And so this particular story map is touching on those structural elements. So what's included in the causeway. So it's kind of, you know, what does the concrete bridge barrier look like? You know, what does this pedestrian railing look like out here adjacent to the bike and pedestrian path? scroll through this quickly. You know, what does the end of the bent caps on the bridge look like? So kind of all those small details on the structure. And then kind of starting to look at some of the retaining walls and other barriers that'll be included on the corridor. Pardon my terrible sketch there. You know, what are the finishes that could be on some of the retaining walls? You know, what sort of the guidelines do we want to include for any lighting out there, for any signage out there? I think that's it for that one. And then starting to do a similar exercise for the landscape design. So, you know, what's the feeling of the landscape out there? Kind of these different categories and of the ecotypes. So kind of the upland areas are marsh and wetlands. Some of the areas within on 37 within Vallejo are classified landscape freeway. So, you know, what does that look like? You know, and how can it sort of speak to what's happening on the rest of the corridor? Sorry, this is still very much a work in progress, you'll see there. And then developing just sort of some initial conceptual plant lists, certainly not the end all be all, but just sort of to give future design teams ideas. And then I'll kind of jump back to this one. So continue to sort of develop these design guidelines. So the other sections will be including on again, stormwater, trails, public access, any vista points out there. And as Joaquin mentioned, we're hoping to have sort of our final master plan here in the next few months. So I'll say that unless you have anything else to add, I think we're open for any questions.
Wonderful. And just looking for maybe questions, feedback, what would kind of frame the discussion or comments here for us?
This was more of an overview just to show you guys kind of where we're at with status. So we presented this to the executive steering committee before. And so this is our first time coming out to the policy committee meeting. And so just exposing you guys to what we're up to. And so it would be for any general feedback. I know a lot of folks behind me and like we've gotten a lot of feedback from our transportation agencies, which has been fantastic. But it's more of letting you folks know that we're taking care of the look of this thing for the future. And if there's anything like, so you've seen our process, and we've gone through the context review. We've kind of looked at what's out there and we've tried to refine our idea. And the end product is more or less, it's a viewing platform. If you think about the Bay Bridge, it's this idea of let's not disguise views out to the bay. So making sure our barriers are transparent and making sure that the colors that we've chosen blend with the tidal marsh, the restored tidal marsh. So a lot of this is about celebrating views out to the restored tidal marsh that will eventually be happening. So yeah, and so we're still working on it. So if there's anything you guys would like to include, we are working with our working group to refine some ideas about potential belvederes or lookout points that you have. And that's what we have on the Bay Bridge, for these points where you can stop and enjoy the views. And what we do there, we got fantastic feedback from Gail from Yochadehe talking about this idea of interpretive signage that could happen there, or some type of silhouettes of indigenous bird species that we could put on the pedestrian railing at those parts to celebrate what's happening there. So those are things that we'll continue to incorporate into this. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I'll look to my colleagues here and certainly to the members of the public afterwards. Start with Supervisor Mashburn.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pleased to hear you're working with Yochadehe. I was going to suggest that we do some outreach with the tribes to talk about, when we talk about landscape architecture, there are very specific plants that are vital to them and that they, I'm sure, would like to see included in that architecture. And if you're partnering with them already, I'm sure they're bringing that up. I would also recommend reaching out to the local RCDs like Solano RCD. They do a lot of native plant horticulture, and they do a lot of native plant production for our region, for our freeways and our projects. 37 is partly our project. If you contact Solano RCD, they'll be able to help with some of those local plants. They work with the tribe also for the production of some of those plants. So highly recommend you outreach to them for what they have and what they can provide for you.
Great. Thank you. That's great.
Great. Any others? Councilman Recklin?
Thank you. I'd like to have some discussion with you offline, if that's okay, regarding lighting and stormwater
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
sure. And the lighting was something that did come up. And so the idea of having that shielded for nocturnal habitat is something that is included in the specifications
Okay,
for the
great.
design. And we were going to remove it at one point, but we decided to keep it in because to have that pedestrian bicycle pathway be actually feasible or usable at night, especially in the winter, we need some type of lighting there for safety. So.
Okay, so Joaquin and Diana, at some point after the meeting, I'd like to get your cards so that we can have some discussion. Okay, great. Thank you.
See any of our committee members online wanting to chime in here? Not seeing any, just the one feedback, and you just mentioned it, Joaquin, with regards to the path there, to the extent I'm sure you're close communication with the different bicycle coalitions and the user groups there. To what extent you could illuminate the path without, having excess light pollution, some downlighting. So the coordinating with the bicycle coalitions, which, we have here would be a good contact as well. I'm sure you're already in contact with them though. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any public comment? Don't see any here in the room.
I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay. Well, Joaquin, Diana, thank you so much for showing us everything you've been working on and exciting stuff. We'll keep moving through our agenda with our last item, which is item 4.5, Smart Novato Sassoon Project Study Report. I'll welcome Shannon.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. I'm Shannon Simons. I'm the Office Chief for Rail Planning and Implementation at Caltrans in the Division of Rail, and I'm joined today with my colleague Bryce Goldstein, who is the Regional Rail Coordinator for the Bay Area, and so she'll be talking a little bit more at the end of the presentation about the Corridor Identification Program. So today we're going to give you just an overview summary of the work that we've been doing with SMART on the Novato Sassoon Project Study Report for Passenger Rail Service. Next slide, please. So to orient you to what we're looking at here, we looked at 3 different physical alignment alternatives in the corridor between Novato and Sassoon. So the one in orange, which is mislabeled in the legend, the orange alignment is the existing railroad right-of-way right now. The blue alignment is the existing railroad right-of-way utilizing a cutoff at Rommel Road to eliminate some of the operational and travel time challenges with that hairpin turn at Shellville. And then we also wanted to take this opportunity to look at an alignment more closely aligned with the State Route 37 and State Route 37 future improvements, in part for many of the reasons that everyone has already mentioned, that it might open up different opportunities for funding sources and project delivery streamlining, but also to be able to serve different markets, namely Vallejo. Next slide, please. So once we looked at the 3 physical alternatives, then we looked at 11 different service types, so service alternatives within the 3 different physical alignment alternatives. So there's kind of 2 main service types that we looked at. One we call through running. So this is really looking at, could we run, kind of an existing locomotive hauled train off of the main lines coming from Sacramento onto the existing rail right-of-way or whatever future right-of-way is in this corridor over to Novato, and then making those timed cross-platform transfers with SMART. The second option is what we're calling the shuttle service. So shuttle service would look at really just kind of ping-ponging service back and forth between Novato and the Sassoon Fairfield station. This would allow us more flexibility in the type of operator and equipment that we potentially use, because it wouldn't be coming on to the Union Pacific main line at Sassoon Fairfield. But you would then have to time kind of cross-platform transfers at both Novato and at the existing Sassoon Fairfield station. So within all of this, so we looked at basically each of the alignments for shuttle and through running. And then when we got down to the State Route 37 alignment, we wanted to also look at double and single tracking within all of those options. Because when we first started looking at our service options, we noticed that there was an opportunity to either have trains meet on a causeway, but then that obviously adds some complexity and just an additional infrastructure having to double track the entire causeway. So we played around with some of the different service alternatives and how we could potentially single or double track the causeway portion to still deliver the travel time and the operational needs that we have here. In some of those State Route 37 options, we looked at serving Vallejo, and in others we didn't. There were some geometrical considerations that make it a little challenging for some of the potential station locations. So we wanted to look at what the impact to complexity and cost would be by both serving and not serving. So that's why you see a lot of subcategories within that State Route 37 service alternative. Next slide, please. So for each of the concepts, we explored the benefits and the investment need for each alternative. And I realize this is a little hard to see, but what you're looking at on the left is kind of a snapshot summary dashboard that we created to evaluate and compare all of the different alternatives. So we're looking at travel times, market served, infrastructure investments that are required, looking at the connections to existing transit service, and we put that all into one summary dashboard that's also looking at a more schematic diagram of potential station locations and services, as well as our string lines and our associated track charts to really understand where any sort of additional infrastructure is needed. And then on the right, we also explored potential locations and investment needs for new stations on the corridor for a couple of the different alignment alternatives. And so you can see one of the potential options for Vallejo kind of at the edge of the city there. Next slide, please. And so after doing all of that, and obviously oversimplifying a lot of this detail in the PSR, but we, got to the rough order magnitude costs in billions for the range of the options here. So it ranges from 1.6 billion, which is roughly either of the existing and Rommel Road cutoff options, and then all the way up to $10 billion, which is the most significant investment, which is either a double track causeway or a single track causeway, but having to add in all of the additional siding and access roadway for some of the emergency evacuation considerations that we would need to have there. All of this is going to continue to be analyzed as part of our corridor identification and development program that Bryce will talk about in a second, but continuing on that path of project development, the preliminary schedule for this is to expect to begin preliminary engineering for an identified alternative in 2031, with a goal, though aggressive goal, of 2037 construction package complete and the start of passenger rail service in the corridor between Novato and Sassoon Fairfields. And so all of this work was done before we knew about Corridor ID, but it's been a really great opportunity to use all of this as an input to this new federal planning and project development program that we're going to be teed up to work on to really advance and refine the alternatives and make decisions in this corridor. And so with that, I am going to say next slide and hand it over to Bryce.
Thank you, Shannon. So as Shannon mentioned, I'm Bryce. I work in her Office of Rail Planning and Implementation, and I'm the Senior Regional Coordinator for the Bay Area and the Capital Corridor. So one of the ways that we intend to advance and refine the alternatives that Shannon went over and keep this moving towards project development is through the Corridor Development Program, also called Corridor ID, and you'll hear the word in this presentation. So the Corridor ID program is a federal program intended to develop a sustained, comprehensive intercity passenger rail planning and development program. It sets forth a capital project pipeline ready for federal funding. And so in Corridor ID, we'll be developing service development plans that establish our service concept and the necessary capital projects to operate that service. The service development plans will identify phased infrastructure investments to accomplish our service goals and our goals of the State Rail Plan. Next slide, please. Caltrans is the sponsor of 5 different corridors that are in Corridor ID. So we have the Capital Corridor, which you'll find the Novato to Sassoon corridor under, as seen at right. This corridor contains both the existing Capital Corridor service area as we know it, as well as proposed extensions to Novato, as well as Reno, San Francisco, and Salinas. And there's overlap with other corridors such as the Central Coast Corridor. We also, under this program, are the sponsor of 4 other corridors, which is the San Joaquin Valley, Central Coast, Coachella Valley, and Lausanne. Next slide, please. There are 3 main steps of Corridor ID. We are currently at the end of step 1, where we scoped for our service development plan in step 2. Under step 1, we developed our scope, schedule, and budget for that work, where in step 2, it'll be a rigorous project planning and development project where we develop our service development plan, which determines which projects move on into preliminary engineering and environmental review in step 3. Projects that move on into step 3 will move into a project. Well, if they complete step 3, they will move on into a project pipeline and may be prioritized for funding under federal and state partnership program. So step 3 will move into NEPA and preliminary engineering, and this gives us a great opportunity to prioritize our projects and hopefully have a better shot at getting federal funds. Next slide, please. We're very excited about this opportunity to partner with the federal government to develop our corridor and identify projects towards implementing rail service. Corridor ID will provide us with a structured, documented framework to validate projects with standard methodologies across each corridor and statewide. The standardized methodologies throughout the state will help improve efficiency and help us prioritize our projects. Corridor ID will help us streamline stakeholder and host railroad coordination, create a phased implementation plan with priority capital projects identified, and gives us the opportunity for our vetted projects to become a priority for federal and state funding opportunities. And that's the end of my section of the presentation. If Shannon has anything to add, now's a great chance, or we can move on to questions. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I'll just add about the corridor identification program is that step 2 is 90% funded by the Federal Railroad Administration, and Caltrans is providing the 10% local match on behalf of all of the partners across the state. When we move into step 3, there will be the question of the 20% match, but it is still 80% funded by the FRA. So again, this is really great opportunity to streamline the planning to project development pipeline, which normally we hit some challenges in having to reapply for funding and then costs increase. And so this is meant to keep a tighter process so that we're really developing priority projects and getting capital funding and getting them into construction sooner. And so thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much. I know we got our general manager from SMART here, Eddie Cummins. As a SMART board member, we were really excited to be part of this corridor ID program. Eddie, before we take questions here, is there anything you wanted to add on this?
No, nothing really to add. I really just want to take this opportunity to thank Shannon and Bryce and the rest of the team there. They've done a lot of great work here. They work closely with the SMART team, and so just really appreciate all the work and great job.
All right. Thank you. Well, thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Bryce. So we'll look to my colleagues. We'll start with Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, and I want to preface by saying I represent the city of American Canyon, so that my question is obvious. It seems like in the Nevados Assumed Project Study Report, no matter what option happens, American Canyon is going to be a stop along the way. Is that correct?
That is probably correct. I guess I should have also said at the beginning, all of these station locations are subject to further analysis as part of the corridor identification program. We're also working closely with Solano and Napa counties on their north-south rail study that they are starting now, which is also looking at potential station locations. And we just want to make sure none of that work precludes any decisions, but I would say it's likely.
Okay, good. Because for what it's worth, I hope that American Canyon is part of the equation no matter what happens. I think it's something we've been looking forward to for a long time. So thank you.
Yep.
Any others? Mayor Source?
Yeah, thank you for this. I know there's a lot of complexity to it, but I'm obviously going to advocate for the inclusion of Vallejo. I think, if we're going to put this much investment in the corridor, we have an opportunity to connect the ferry to rail. Right now, we have a ferry terminal in Vallejo and the rail in Sassoon in Solano County, and the only way to get from one to the other is a bus. So if this project could be brought to Vallejo, now we've got rail all the way through. People can take rail from either direction, get on the ferry, get to San Francisco. They can get to our transit center, get on a bus, get to BART. Like, we're the way over the bridge. We're the way onto the water to, there's the station in the connection to the station in, I think it was Larkspur, the ferry, but I mean, we're a great hub for that. And then if you look, we talked about this a little bit with the 37 project, with the investment that we have on Mare Island and the plans that we have on Mare Island. There's going to be potentially a lot more activity in the coming years there. And I think skirting it with a rail would be a big oversight on our part. So I know it's more cost, but I would want to advocate for that and kind of seek the partnership of my colleagues to figure out a way that we can do that. And then, yeah, Solano and Napa, we'll figure out how to get the north-south, because that's an important missing piece in this puzzle as well. No, and I don't want.
Make sure that everybody thinks about hustling, right?
We're all hustling our own towns, but I think there's no way. I think we need that if we're gonna put billions of dollars of investment into this, we might as well do it right. I mean, I think the one thing we all have in common up here is that we got left out of BART, and we know what that means to have been left out of BART. So if we're gonna do something big, let's not leave cities out, because once you leave somebody out, you can't get them back in.
Thank you. Others? Not seeing any. We'll look in colleagues online. We'll go to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Don't see any
Yes.
here. I see a hand or two. Yes.
Yes. Kate Powers, please unmute.
Thank you. I just had a question along the Highway 37 alternative and the different options for the causeway. Is the rail planned to be lifted out of the marsh and raised on a causeway? And is that causeway separate from the causeway that Caltrans has planned for the roadway as the ultimate project? Or how do they interrelate? Thanks.
Thanks. And maybe I'm going to put Bill in the room on the spot. I can't remember exactly how high we ended up modeling for the new right away on the State Route 37 right away for the causeway. I think we were accounting for not all. Good, Bill's walking up. I can't remember if we accounted for 2100 levels or not for the causeway. And I will say some of those costs are probably on the high end for the causeway because of where we were at in this process and where the highway project already was. It doesn't necessarily account for all of the potential efficiencies if we build some of these shared structures or utilize Caltrans air rights or other rights of way that we already own on the highway side. So there are some potentials as we kind of continue to refine the alternatives and do some value engineering, that some of the 37 costs could potentially come down if we're looking at more of like shared structures or shared rights of way and things like that. But Bill, go ahead. Thank you.
Shannon pretty much covered it. Good morning, everybody. Bill Gamlin, Chief Engineer with SMART. We worked closely with Shannon and Bryce on this work. Generally, yes, the section along 37 was envisioned to be a causeway structure. It would probably be an independent structure. We've got different loadings with the train versus the highway facility, but it's very early in the process and everything is very conceptual at this point. But generally, yes, a causeway structure, which is reflected in the high costs of the project.
Great. Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Just look to my colleagues here if there's anything else before we conclude this. Not seeing any. I really want to thank Shannon and Bryce for your time and for the update. Exciting stuff, things for us to all be thinking about in the future. And with that, that concludes our discussion and information items for today. We'll move on to item number 5, which is public comment for items not on today's agenda. Are there any here in the room or any online? Not seeing any. I'll draw everybody's attention to our future meeting schedule. Our next meeting will be May 7th, hosted by Solano and chaired by our new chair on May 7th. And the future topics there, any last comments? Not seeing any. We are going to adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in May. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Eric.